The observation deck of the Galactic Combat Council station buzzed with alien voices, each species represented by their finest warriors. Commander Zix-9 of the Krellian Empire adjusted his forearms, each ending in razor-sharp claws that could slice through titanium. His reptilian eyes scanned the assembled crowd with obvious disdain. So these humans actually believe they deserve a seat on the Combat Council? Zix-9's voice carried across the chamber, causing several species to turn their attention toward him. I've reviewed their planetary conflicts, primitive weapons, crude tactics, and they actually harm their own kind for territory disputes. The massive Gorlaxian representative, standing nearly 12 feet tall with stone-like skin, rumbled in agreement. Their strongest warriors use metal sticks and explosive devices. No natural weapons, no evolved combat abilities. It's almost pathetic. A collective murmur of agreement rippled through the gathering. The ethereal voidlings, beings of pure energy contained in crystalline forms, pulsed with what could only be described as amusement. Their telepathic communication reached every mind present. We have observed their gladiatorial contests. They strike each other with padded gloves, following arbitrary rules. Such limitation suggests fundamental weakness. Ambassador Chen Wei stood quietly in the corner, representing Earth's interests in this gathering of galactic superpowers. At 62 years old, he had served humanity's diplomatic corps for over 3 decades, but nothing had prepared him for this level of cosmic condescension. His weathered face remained calm, though his hands clenched slightly behind his back. The Combat Council had been formed millennia ago when the first interstellar conflicts arose between expanding civilizations. Rather than engage in devastating wars that could destroy entire star systems, the major powers agreed to settle disputes through formalized combat trials. The strongest warriors from each species would represent their people's interests in carefully controlled duels, with the outcomes determining territorial rights, trade agreements, and political influence across the galaxy. Earth had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and made first contact 6 months ago. The discovery that humanity was not alone in the universe had sent shockwaves through every government on the planet. Now, as the newest potential member of the galactic community, Earth faced the challenge of proving itself worthy of respect among beings who had evolved specifically for warfare. "Tell me, Ambassador Chen," called out a silky voice from across the chamber. The speaker was Valerian Ashworth III, representative of the Neo-Britannia colony, humans who had left Earth centuries ago during the generation ship programs and had somehow developed their own advanced technology. He wore an elegant military uniform adorned with medals, his blonde hair perfectly styled despite the artificial gravity. "Surely you don't expect these council members to take seriously a planet where the inhabitants still engage in such barbaric behavior as boxing and wrestling?" Chen's jaw tightened. He had been briefed about the Neo-Britannians, descendants of Earth humans who considered themselves superior to their planetary cousins. Their colony had encountered alien technology early and used it to enhance their own capabilities. They had been council members for nearly a century, and their attitude toward Earth was perhaps more insulting than the aliens' open disdain. Earth's martial traditions run deeper than surface appearances might suggest, Chen replied evenly. Our combat arts have been refined over thousands of years, developing not just physical prowess, but mental discipline and spiritual strength. This statement triggered what could only be described as alien laughter. The Krellians made a series of clicking sounds, while the Gorlaxians produced deep, grinding rumbles. Even the normally stoic mechanosynthesis units, cybernetic beings from the outer rim, processed what their translation protocols registered as humor. High Chancellor Vorthak, the presiding officer of the Combat Council, raised one of his 6 arms for silence. The ancient being's species, the Dominarii, had evolved from apex predators on a world where only the strongest survived. His exoskeleton bore the scars of countless battles, and his compound eyes could track movement faster than most beings could even perceive. "Ambassador Chen," Vorthak's voice resonated with authority. "The Combat Council has reviewed Earth's submission for membership. Your planet's greatest warriors appear to be athletes, individuals who compete in games with rules designed to prevent serious injury. This does not inspire confidence in humanity's ability to represent itself in true combat scenarios." "Furthermore," added Zix-9, his claws extending slightly, "your species lacks any notable physical advantages. No natural armor, no poison glands, no enhanced strength or speed. You're essentially hairless primates with delusions of adequacy." The chamber erupted in what passed for alien amusement. Chen felt his face flush with anger, but his diplomatic training kept his voice steady. "High Chancellor, if I may, Earth requests the opportunity to demonstrate our combat capabilities through the traditional Trial of Champions." The laughter died immediately. The Trial of Champions was the most serious form of combat evaluation in the galactic community. It involved actual life-or-death battles between representatives of different species, with outcomes that could determine the fate of entire civilizations. Vorthak's compound eyes focused intently on Chen. "Ambassador, you understand what you're requesting? The trial requires your champion to face 3 opponents in succession. Defeat means death. There is no surrender, no mercy, no second chances." "Earth understands the terms," Chen replied firmly, though his heart was racing. He was gambling with more than his own life. The future of humanity's place in the galaxy hung in the balance. "Very well," Vorthak announced. "Earth will be permitted to present 1 champion for evaluation. However, given the preliminary assessments of your species' capabilities, we will require your warrior to face opponents from the current lowest tier of council members. This is not intended as an insult, merely a practical consideration for safety. The lowest tier consisted of species that were themselves formidable by any Earth standard. The Razor Claw Collective, whose warriors could regenerate lost limbs during battle. The Sonic Screamers, whose vocal cords could shatter bone and disrupt neural function. The Phase Hunters, who could temporarily shift between dimensions to avoid attacks. "When will your champion arrive?" Vorthak inquired. "He's already here," Chen said simply. This statement caused confusion throughout the chamber. Various species began scanning the room with enhanced senses, looking for some hidden human warrior they might have overlooked. "Where?" demanded Zix-9. Chen gestured toward the chamber's meditation alcove, where a figure had been sitting motionless for the past 3 hours. So still and quiet had he been that most of the aliens had simply ignored his presence, assuming he was some sort of furniture or decorative element. The figure rose slowly, and for the first time, the assembled warriors of the galaxy focused their attention on Li Wei, the 47th generation Shaolin master of the Songshan Temple. He was not what anyone expected. Standing barely 5 feet 8 inches tall and weighing perhaps 160 pounds, Li Wei appeared almost fragile compared to the giants around him. His head was shaved bald in the traditional manner, and he wore simple orange and brown robes that seemed to flow with each movement. His age was difficult to determine. He could have been 30 or 60, his features bearing the timeless quality that comes from a lifetime of meditation and physical discipline. "This is your champion?" Valerian Ashworth III could barely contain his incredulity. "He looks like an elderly monk." "He is an elderly monk," Chen confirmed. "Master Li Wei has dedicated his life to the study of combat, meditation, and the cultivation of internal energy. He represents traditions that are older than many of your civilizations." Li Wei stepped forward, and despite his small stature, something about his presence commanded attention. His movements were fluid and precise. each step placed with perfect balance. His eyes, dark and calm, surveyed the assembled warriors without fear or judgment. "Honored beings," Li Wei spoke for the first time, his voice soft but carrying clearly throughout the chamber. "I am grateful for this opportunity to learn from you and to share what small knowledge I possess." The Gorlaxian representative let out a grinding laugh that shook the floor plates. "This is supposed to be intimidating? I could crush him with one finger." "In 3 standard days," Vorthak announced, "the trial will commence. Master Li Wei will face 3 opponents in succession. Combat will be to the death, with no weapons permitted beyond natural abilities and physical prowess. Are all parties in agreement?" "Wait," interrupted a new voice. The speaker was Captain Thane Drakemore of the Astral Reapers, a mercenary organization that held council membership through sheer brutal efficiency. His cybernetically enhanced form towered over even the Gorlaxians, and his reputation for ruthlessness was legendary throughout the galaxy. "This human monk, what are his recorded combat achievements?" Chen consulted his tablet. "Master Li Wei has spent 37 years in monastic training. He has no recorded competitive fights or military service." The chamber exploded with noise. Alien voices raised in disbelief, mockery, and what could only be described as outrage. The idea that Earth would send a pacifist monk to represent humanity in mortal combat struck many species as either incredibly brave or monumentally stupid. "This is insulting," roared Zix-9. "They mocked the trial by sending a contemplative. He has no warrior's spirit, no killer instinct, no battle experience." "Perhaps," suggested Valerian Ashworth with a cruel smile. "This is simply Earth's way of surrendering without directly admitting defeat. Send a sacrificial lamb, claim they tried their best, and accept their place as a minor protectorate under more capable civilizations." Li Wei remained motionless throughout the outburst, his breathing steady and his expression serene. He seemed to be listening not just to the words, but to something deeper, the underlying emotions, the fears and assumptions that drove such passionate responses. "The trial will proceed as scheduled," Vorthak declared, bringing order to the chaos. "Master Li Wei, do you accept the terms of combat?" "I accept," Li Wei replied simply. As the chamber began to empty, with various species making arrangements for the upcoming spectacle, Li Wei returned to the meditation alcove. He settled into the lotus position and closed his eyes, his breathing deepening into the rhythmic patterns that had sustained his practice for decades. Chen approached him carefully. "Master Li, are you certain about this? I've seen recordings of council combat trials. The warriors you'll face are literally killing machines. They've evolved for nothing but war and destruction." Li Wei opened his eyes and regarded the ambassador with gentle understanding. "Ambassador Chen, fear creates suffering, and suffering clouds judgment. These beings see only the external appearance, size, strength, weapons, armor. But true power comes from within. The body is merely the vessel. The spirit is the warrior. But Master, with respect, spiritual philosophy won't stop a 12-foot-tall alien from tearing you apart." Li Wei smiled peacefully. "You speak truth about the physical realm, but you forget. Qi flows through all living beings, regardless of their origin planet. These aliens have great physical power, but they have forgotten the deeper sources of strength. They mistake brutality for skill, intimidation for strategy." "Are you saying you can actually win?" "I am saying that victory and defeat are illusions created by the ego. I will face what comes with an open heart and clear mind. The outcome will be what it must be." Chen found little comfort in this philosophical response, but he recognized the futility of trying to change the master's mind. As Earth's representative, he had committed humanity to this course of action. Now they would all live or die with the consequences. In the corridors outside, alien warriors were already making bets on how quickly the human monk would be dispatched. The general consensus was somewhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes, depending on whether his opponents chose to toy with him first. None of them had any idea what they were about to witness. 3 days remained until the trial of champions would determine humanity's fate among the stars. The combat arena aboard the Council Station was a marvel of galactic engineering. The circular chamber stretched 200 meters in diameter, with walls that could project any environment from member worlds. Energy barriers separated the combat zone from elevated viewing platforms where hundreds of alien dignitaries, warriors, and diplomats had gathered to witness what many believed would be the shortest trial in Council history. Master Li Wei sat in the preparation chamber, maintaining the same lotus position he had held for most of the past 3 days. His breathing was so slow and controlled that several medical scanners had initially registered him as deceased. Ambassador Chen paced nervously nearby, reviewing contingency plans that seemed increasingly inadequate. "Master Li," Chen said for perhaps the 10th time, "the first opponent has been selected. It's Gorak the Bone Crusher from the Razorclaw Collective. He's 7 feet tall, weighs over 400 pounds, and his exoskeleton can deflect small arms fire. His claws contain a paralytic neurotoxin, and he can regenerate any lost appendage within minutes." Li Wei opened his eyes slowly, as if emerging from a deep meditation. "Tell me about his spirit, Ambassador." "His spirit? What drives him to fight? What does he fear? What makes him angry?" Chen consulted his briefing notes frantically. "Intelligence reports suggest he's extremely aggressive, easily provoked, and tends to rely on overwhelming physical force rather than strategy." "Ah," Li Wei nodded with understanding. "A warrior trapped by his own strength. He has forgotten that true power requires balance." The preparation chamber door slid open, revealing High Chancellor Vorthak and his retinue of council officials. Behind them stood several news drones from major galactic networks, their sensors recording every detail for broadcast across thousands of worlds. "Master Li Wei," Vorthak announced formally, "the trial of champions now begins. Do you require any final preparations?" Li Wei rose gracefully to his feet, moving with a fluid motion that seemed to defy the station's artificial gravity. He bowed respectfully to the Chancellor. "I am ready, honored leader." As they walked toward the arena entrance, Chen couldn't help but notice how every alien they passed stared at Li Wei with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright amusement. The master's orange and brown robes fluttered gently as he walked, and his bare feet made no sound against the metal floor plates. "Has the human taken leave of his senses?" whispered a ethereal voidling to its companion. "He shows no preparation, no aggression, no warrior's focus. It's as if he's walking to a garden party." Commander Zix-9 leaned over the viewing platform railing, his 4 arms flexing in anticipation. "Perhaps this will finally demonstrate to the galaxy that Earth humans are fundamentally unfit for civilized space. They'll serve better as a labor class for more capable species." Valerian Ashworth III adjusted his military uniform and activated his personal recording device. "This footage will make an excellent training example for our academies," he told his aide. "Sometimes the best lesson is seeing what happens when preparation meets delusion." The arena floor had been configured to resemble a rocky wasteland, neutral terrain that favored no particular species. As Li Wei entered through the southern gate, the assembled crowd fell silent for a moment, struck by the surreal image of such a small, peaceful-looking figure in such a vast space designed for violence. The northern gate rumbled open, and Gorak the Bone Crusher emerged. Even the seasoned galactic warriors in the viewing platforms felt a collective chill at the sight of him. Gorak stood nearly 8 feet tall, his muscular frame covered in natural armor plating that gleamed like polished obsidian. Each of his four arms ended in razor-sharp claws that dripped with the paralytic toxin that had ended dozens of previous opponents. His head was elongated and reptilian, with multiple rows of crystalline teeth that could bite through most known metals. The contrast between the two fighters was so extreme that several alien dignitaries began expressing concerns about the match's fairness, though not for the reasons Ambassador Chen would have preferred. "This is barely sport," complained a Sonic Screamer delegate. "The human will be dead before he can even attempt to flee." High Chancellor Vorthak's voice boomed across the arena through the translation system. "Let the first combat commence. No rules apply beyond the use of natural abilities only. Combat continues until one participant is deceased or completely incapacitated. Begin!" Gorak let out a bone-rattling roar that had been known to paralyze smaller species through sheer acoustic trauma. The sound echoed off the arena walls, amplified by the acoustics until it resembled the sound of a starship engine failing. Several aliens in the viewing platforms instinctively covered their auditory organs. Li Wei stood motionless in the center of the arena, his eyes closed, seemingly unaffected by the terrifying display. His breathing remained steady and controlled. "Why isn't he moving?" demanded Captain Thane Drakemore. "Is he frozen with fear?" Gorak charged forward, his massive form thundering across the rocky terrain. Each footstep cracked the reinforced floor plates, and his claws gleamed with deadly toxin. The distance between the fighters closed rapidly. 50 meters, 30, 20, 10... At the last possible second, Li Wei moved. What happened next would be analyzed by xenobiologists and combat theorists for decades afterward. Instead of attempting to dodge or block the crushing charge, Li Wei stepped forward at an angle, his body rotating with perfect timing. His right hand, moving in a precise circular motion, made contact with Gorak's leading wrist. The result defied every law of physics that the assembled aliens understood. Gorak, despite his massive weight and momentum, found his charge redirected. His own force, amplified by his speed, sent him stumbling sideways. As he fought to regain his balance, Li Wei's left palm struck gently against the alien warrior's lower back, a touch so light it would barely have disturbed a feather. Gorak crashed to the ground with tremendous force, his armored body skidding across the arena floor and leaving gouges in the reinforced plating. The viewing platforms erupted in confusion. Translation systems struggled to process the variety of shocked exclamations, questions, and demands for instant replay analysis. How did a 160-pound human redirect a 400-pound charging warrior? Demanded a Gorlaxian physicist. The momentum transfer equations don't balance. Perhaps the human used some form of technological enhancement, suggested a mechanosynthesis representative. Hidden gravitic manipulators or kinetic dampeners? Gorak roared in fury as he regained his feet. The fall had damaged his pride more than his body, though several plates of his natural armor showed stress fractures. He studied his opponent more carefully this time, his predatory instincts finally recognizing that something was amiss. Li Wei maintained his centered stance, hands relaxed at his sides. To the observing aliens, he appeared to be doing nothing at all. They couldn't see the internal energy circulation, the precise breathing patterns, or the mental calculations that allowed him to read his opponent's intentions before the creature himself was fully aware of them. "Clever trick, little human," Gorak snarled through the translation system. "But you can't redirect what you can't see coming." The Razor Claw warrior activated his species' natural camouflage ability. His obsidian armor shifted and shimmered, bending light around his form until he became nearly invisible against the rocky arena floor. Only the occasional glint of claw or tooth marked his position as he began circling his prey. The viewing platforms grew quiet. This was a technique that had defeated countless opponents across the galaxy. Even seasoned warriors had difficulty tracking a cloaked Razor Claw fighter. Li Wei closed his eyes completely. Now the human shows his true nature, Zix-9 observed with satisfaction, surrendering to fate rather than fighting to the end. At least he accepts his species' limitations. But Li Wei was not surrendering. Master Liu, his teacher's teacher, had once blindfolded him for 3 months during his training, forcing him to develop senses beyond the merely physical. The eyes, Master Liu had said, see only surfaces. The spirit perceives truth. Li Wei's breathing deepened, and his awareness expanded beyond sight. He felt the vibrations in the floor that marked Gorak's footsteps. He sensed the displacement of air molecules as the massive form moved around him. Most importantly, he perceived the warrior's ki, the life energy that flowed through all beings, alien or human, regardless of their evolutionary origin. Gorak's ki was chaotic and aggressive, pulsing with anger and confusion. It moved in predictable patterns, following the creature's emotional state rather than strategic thinking. To Li Wei's enhanced perception, the cloaked alien was as visible as a blazing torch in a dark room. The attack came from behind, exactly where Li Wei had sensed it would. Gorak's claws, dripping with paralytic toxin, slashed toward the monk's neck with enough force to decapitate most humanoid species. Li Wei pivoted smoothly on one foot, his body rotating just enough to let the deadly claws pass harmlessly through empty air. As Gorak's momentum carried him forward, Li Wei's fingers struck 3 precise points along the alien's extended arm. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Gorak's entire right arm went completely numb, the paralytic claws falling limp and useless. The warrior stumbled forward, his camouflage failing as his concentration broke. "Impossible!" roared Captain Drakemore. "Razor Claw armor is specifically evolved to prevent nervous system attacks." Ambassador Chen leaned forward in his seat, his heart racing. He recognized the technique, though he had never seen it used on an alien physiology. "Pressure point manipulation," he whispered to himself. "He's targeting the QE meridians." Gorak spun around, now fully visible and nursing his disabled arm. His reptilian eyes showed a mixture of pain and bewilderment. "What did you do to me? Human?" "I redirected the flow of your life energy," Li Wei replied simply. "Your arm will recover its function within an hour, once the natural circulation resumes." "You're telling me," Vorthak said slowly, his compound eyes focusing intently on the small human, "that your species has developed techniques to manipulate the bioelectric nervous systems of other life forms?" Li Wei turned toward the viewing platform and bowed respectfully. "Honored Chancellor, what we call ki, what you might call bioelectric energy, flows through all living beings according to natural laws. These laws do not recognize species boundaries." The implications of this statement rippled through the assembled aliens like a shock wave. If humans could manipulate nervous systems across species lines, if they had developed techniques that worked on any form of life. Gorak charged again, this time using only his 3 functional arms. His approach was more cautious, more tactical, but his anger made him predictable. Li Wei seemed to flow around the attack like water around a stone, his movements so smooth and economical that he appeared to be dancing rather than fighting. Each time Gorak attacked, Li Wei responded with precise, minimal contact. A touch here, a gentle push there, always redirecting the alien's force rather than opposing it directly. Within minutes, Gorak found himself stumbling repeatedly, his balance completely disrupted despite his superior strength and size. "He's using the alien's own strength against him," observed a sonic screamer analyst. "But that should be impossible. Our combat computers have analyzed thousands of fighting styles, and none demonstrate this level of efficiency." "It's not just physical technique," added a ethereal voidling, its crystalline form pulsing with intense concentration. "The human is reading and manipulating energy patterns that we barely understand ourselves." Gorak made one final desperate assault. Gathering all his remaining strength, he leaped high into the air, all four claws extended, intending to crash down on his opponent with overwhelming force. Li Wei waited until the last possible moment, then stepped aside and placed both palms against Gorak's descending form. Instead of resisting the impact, he guided it, redirecting the warrior's momentum downward and forward. Gorak struck the arena floor with tremendous force, creating a spiderweb of cracks in the reinforced plating. This time, he did not get up. The impact, amplified by his own strength and Li Wei's redirection, had left him unconscious and severely injured. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor as Li Wei stepped back and bowed toward his fallen opponent. "I honor your courage, warrior Gorak. You fought with great spirit." The arena was completely silent. Hundreds of alien species, many of whom had never witnessed their own champions defeated by a smaller opponent, struggled to process what they had just seen. "The first combat is concluded," Vorthak announced, his voice carrying a new note of respect. "Master Li Wei is victorious." As medical personnel attended to Gorak, Li Wei returned to the center of the arena and resumed his meditative stance. His breathing was still calm and controlled, showing no signs of exhaustion despite the intense physical encounter. "Honored Chancellor," Li Wei called out, "I am ready for the second opponent." A collective gasp arose from the viewing platforms. Traditionally, champions were given several hours to rest between combats, to recover from injuries, and prepare mentally for the next challenge. "Master Li," Vorthak replied, "the standard rest period between combats is—" "I require no rest, honored leader. The way of Qi teaches us to flow like water, always moving, always renewing. I am prepared to continue." In the preparation chambers, the remaining two selected opponents watched recording of the first combat with growing concern. Sk-Tha of the Sonic Screamers began running advanced acoustic calculations, trying to determine if her sound-based attacks would prove more effective than brute force. Zeph 9 of the Phase Hunters activated his dimensional shifting abilities, testing to ensure his technology would function properly. Neither of them had expected to face a human who could manipulate energy patterns they barely understood themselves. The Trial of Champions had taken on an entirely different character than anyone had anticipated. In the viewing platforms, alien dignitaries began urgent conferences with their combat analysts and xenobiologists. Earth's combat capabilities required complete re-evaluation, and the political implications were staggering. Ambassador Chen allowed himself a small smile. Perhaps Master Li Wei knew exactly what he was doing after all. The second phase of humanity's trial was about to begin. The northern gate opened once again, and Sk-Tha of the Sonic Screamers emerged into the arena. Her serpentine form stretched nearly 10 feet in length, covered in crystalline scales that resonated with harmonic frequencies. Her species had evolved on a world where sound was the primary weapon, and her vocal cords could generate acoustic waves capable of shattering stone or disrupting neural function across multiple species. Li Wei remained in the center of the arena, his posture unchanged from the previous battle. If anything, he appeared more centered and focused than before, as if the first combat had been merely a warm-up exercise. "The second combat begins now," High Chancellor Vorthak announced. Sk-Tha wasted no time with dramatic displays. She had studied the recording of Gorak's defeat and recognized that this human possessed abilities far beyond normal parameters. Her approach would be scientific and methodical. She opened her mouth and released a focused sonic pulse designed to disrupt the inner ear and cause severe disorientation. The sound was precisely calibrated to affect humanoid nervous systems, and it had proven effective against dozens of different species. Li Wei closed his eyes and deepened his breathing. To the amazement of every alien observer, he showed no signs of distress. The sonic attack, which should have left him writhing in agony on the arena floor, seemed to pass through him without effect. "Impossible!" whispered the Sonic Screamer delegation's chief scientist. "Our acoustic weapons affect all carbon-based life forms with auditory systems." But Li Wei was not simply enduring the sound. He was harmonizing with it. His years of meditation had taught him to perceive and manipulate energy in all its forms, including acoustic vibrations. Instead of resisting the sonic attack, he allowed it to flow through his body while maintaining his internal equilibrium. Seskatha increased the intensity, adding subsonic frequencies designed to disrupt cardiac rhythm and respiratory function. The combined acoustic assault created a wall of destructive sound that made the arena itself vibrate ominously. Li Wei began to move. His movements were unlike anything the galactic warriors had ever witnessed. Instead of the flowing circular motions he had used against Gorak, Li Wei now moved in sharp, precise patterns that seemed to cut through the sonic waves themselves. Each gesture created small pockets of acoustic calm, dead zones where the sound could not penetrate. "He's creating constructive interference patterns," exclaimed a mechanosynthesis acoustics expert, "using physical movement to cancel out specific sound frequencies. But that requires real-time calculation of wave dynamics across multiple harmonic ranges." Li Wei stepped forward, and with each step, his movements became more complex. His hands traced intricate patterns in the air, each motion precisely timed to disrupt Seskatha's acoustic attacks. The deadly sound waves that had been filling the arena began to falter and break apart. Seskatha realized with growing alarm that her opponent was not just defending against her attacks. He was systematically dismantling them. She switched tactics, attempting to generate chaotic, unpredictable sound patterns that couldn't be easily countered. Li Wei paused, centered himself, and began a form that the watching aliens would later describe as the most beautiful and terrifying thing they had ever seen. It was the tiger and crane dance, an ancient Shaolin form that harmonized opposing forces into perfect balance. As Li Wei moved through the complex sequence, something extraordinary happened. The chaotic sound waves around him began to organize themselves, drawn into the rhythm of his movements like iron filings, following magnetic field lines. "By the void," breathed an ethereal voidling. "He's conducting the sound itself." Within moments, Li Wei had transformed Seskatha's destructive cacophony into a symphony of harmonized frequencies. The acoustic energy that should have been killing him was now flowing around him in beautiful, complex patterns that amplified rather than disrupted his movements. Seskatha attempted one final attack, a concentrated beam of pure sonic destruction that could shatter molecular bonds. It was her species' most devastating weapon, capable of literally tearing apart target organisms at the cellular level. Li Wei met the attack head-on, his body moving in a spiraling pattern that seemed to wrap the deadly sound around him like a cloak. Then, in a movement so fast that even enhanced alien vision could barely track it, he redirected the entire acoustic assault back at its source. The concentrated sonic beam struck Seskatha with her own reflected force. The crystalline scales that covered her body evolved specifically to resonate with sound, shattered like glass. She collapsed to the arena floor, overwhelmed by the feedback from her own weapon. "Second combat concluded," Vorthak announced, his voice carrying a note of something approaching awe. "Master Li Wei is victorious." As medical teams attended to Seskatha, the viewing platforms buzzed with frantic conversation. Alien combat analysts were reassessing everything they thought they knew about warfare and energy manipulation. "The human didn't just defeat the Sonic Screamer," observed Captain Drakemore, his cybernetic enhancements working overtime to process the combat data. "He turned her primary evolutionary advantage against her. That suggests a level of tactical adaptability we've never encountered." Commander Zix-9's forearms flexed nervously as he watched Li Wei prepare for the final combat. Perhaps we've underestimated Earth's strategic value, he muttered to his aide. A species that can neutralize our combat advantages so easily, they could be valuable allies or dangerous enemies. Valerian Ashworth III had stopped recording and was frantically consulting with his Neo-Britannia military advisors. The implications for their own colonial policies were becoming uncomfortably clear. If Earth humans possess these capabilities, the balance of power in human space might be shifting in ways they hadn't anticipated. The final gate opened, and Zeph 9 of the Phase Hunters materialized in the arena. His species was among the most feared in the galaxy, capable of shifting between dimensions to become temporarily intangible. They could phase through solid matter, appear and disappear at will, and strike from angles that existed outside normal three-dimensional space. Zeph 9's form was humanoid but elongated, standing nearly 9 feet tall with skin that seemed to shift and waver as if seen through rippling water. His eyes were multifaceted, capable of perceiving across dimensional barriers, and his movements carried the unsettling quality of something not entirely present in normal reality. "Third and final combat begins," Vorthak announced. Zeph 9 immediately activated his phasing ability and vanished from normal space-time. To most observers, he had simply disappeared, becoming completely undetectable by conventional senses. Li Wei opened his eyes and smiled peacefully. "Where did you go, honored opponent?" he called out to the apparently empty arena. "I sense your presence, but you seem to be hiding between the spaces of reality." From somewhere in the dimensional fold, Zeph 9's voice echoed with confusion. "How can you perceive me when I exist outside your dimensional framework?" "Because Qi flows through all dimensions," Li Wei replied simply. "What you call reality is merely one layer of existence. The life force that animates all beings transcends such boundaries." To prove his point, Li Wei reached out with one hand and gently touched what appeared to be empty air. There was a sound like tearing fabric, and Zeph 9 suddenly materialized, his phasing ability completely disrupted by the contact. "Impossible!" the Phase Hunter exclaimed. "Nothing can affect a being while they're shifted between dimensions." "You are still here," Li Wei explained patiently. "You have simply moved to a different frequency of existence. But your spirit, your essential energy, remains connected to this reality, and that connection can be influenced." The viewing platforms had gone completely silent. Even the most advanced alien civilizations had never developed technology capable of affecting phased beings. The Phase Hunters had been considered nearly invincible because of this ability. Zeph 9 attempted to phase again, but each time he tried, Li Wei's gentle touch would pull him back into normal space. The human seemed to be grasping something fundamental about dimensional mechanics that the Phase Hunters themselves didn't fully understand. "How?" Zeph 9 demanded, his multifaceted eyes showing genuine fear for the first time in centuries. "How can a primitive species manipulate interdimensional physics?" "We do not manipulate," Li Wei replied. "We harmonize. Your technology forces separation between dimensions, creating conflict where none need exist. Our way seeks unity, balance, the natural flow that connects all things." Growing desperate, Zeph 9 activated his species' ultimate weapon, a dimensional rift attack that could tear holes in space-time itself. Reality warped around him as he prepared to literally remove his opponent from existence by banishing him to a null dimension. Li Wei closed his eyes and began the most advanced form in all of Shaolin martial arts, the Universal Harmony Kata. It was a technique so complex that only a few masters in each generation could perform it, and it had never been attempted against interdimensional forces. As Li Wei moved through the form, something unprecedented happened throughout the arena. The dimensional rift that Zeph 9 had created began to stabilize and harmonize with normal space-time. Instead of tearing reality apart, it became a bridge between dimensions, a pathway for energy to flow freely between different levels of existence. "By the eternal void," whispered High Chancellor Vorthak. "He's healing the dimensional damage while it's being created." Li Wei's movements became a dance between dimensions, his form visible simultaneously in normal space and the quantum foam that existed between realities. He was demonstrating that the boundaries between dimensions were illusions, convenient concepts that helped limited minds understand infinity, but not absolute truths. Zeph 9 found himself pulled into the harmony, his dimensional abilities no longer under his control. Instead of allowing him to phase between realities, they now connected him more deeply to the universal flow that Li Wei was channeling. For the first time in his existence, the phase hunter experienced true unity with the cosmos. The experience was so overwhelming that Zeph 9 collapsed, not from physical damage, but from spiritual enlightenment. His species had spent millennia learning to escape reality. Li Wei had shown him how to embrace it completely. "Final combat concluded," Vorthak announced, his voice filled with reverence. "Master Li Wei is victorious." Li Wei bowed deeply toward each of his 3 defeated opponents, then turned to face the viewing platforms. His small form, unchanged by the extraordinary battles he had just won, somehow filled the entire arena with its presence. "Honored beings of the galactic community," he said, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the chamber. "I thank you for this opportunity to learn and to share. Combat, true combat, is not about conquest or domination. It is about understanding yourself, your opponent, and the forces that connect all life." High Chancellor Vorthak descended from the viewing platform to the arena floor, an honor rarely bestowed even on victorious champions. His ancient exoskeleton, scarred from countless battles, seemed to gleam with new respect. "Master Li Wei of Earth," Vorthak declared formally, "you have demonstrated capabilities that exceed our current understanding of combat arts and energy manipulation. The Combat Council hereby grants Earth full membership with all associated rights and privileges." The arena erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, but this time the sounds were of respect rather than mockery. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive were now demanding immediate diplomatic exchanges to study Earth's martial traditions. Ambassador Chen felt tears of relief and pride running down his face. Humanity had not just earned acceptance, they had revolutionized the galactic understanding of what was possible. Commander Zix 9 was among the first to approach Li Wei. "Master Human, I owe you an apology. I mistook gentleness for weakness, wisdom for ignorance. Would your people consider sharing some of your knowledge with the Krellian Empire?" Similar requests came from dozens of other species. The ethereal voidlings wanted to study key manipulation techniques. The mechanosynthesis units were fascinated by the possibility of harmonizing technology with natural energy flows. Even the Gorlaxians, despite their pride, admitted that human combat arts offered insights their own warriors could benefit from. Valerian Ashworth III approached last, his perfect military bearing somewhat diminished. "Master Li Wei, the Neo-Britannia colony has perhaps been hasty in our assessment of Earth's potential. We would be honored to renew cultural ties with our ancestral world." Li Wei smiled warmly at each request. "Knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied. Earth would be pleased to establish exchanges with all who seek harmony over conflict." As the crowd began to disperse, High Chancellor Vorthak lingered in the arena with Li Wei and Ambassador Chen. "Master Li," Vorthak said quietly, "in my centuries of presiding over these trials, I have never seen anything like what you demonstrated today. You didn't just defeat 3 of our finest warriors. You taught them something about themselves. That is a rare gift." "Honored Chancellor," Li Wei replied with characteristic humility, Every being contains infinite potential. Sometimes we simply need reminders of what we truly are. And what are we in your estimation? Li Wei looked up at the vast dome of the arena, where stars were visible through transparent aluminum panels. We are all children of the same universe, expressions of the same fundamental forces. Our differences in form and thought are beautiful variations on a single theme. When we remember this truth, conflict becomes cooperation, and strength flows from unity rather than dominance. Vorthak's compound eyes reflected the starlight as he processed this perspective. Your species will be a valuable addition to our community, Master Li, but I suspect Earth will change the galaxy more than the galaxy changes Earth. As they prepared to leave the arena, Ambassador Chen couldn't resist asking, Master Li, were you ever actually in any real danger during those fights? Li Wei considered the question carefully. Every moment contains infinite possibilities, Ambassador Chen. I could have been defeated by any of those magnificent warriors if I had allowed fear or pride to cloud my perception. The outcome was never certain until it was certain. But you seemed so confident. So calm? Confidence comes from preparation. Calm comes from acceptance. I prepared my entire life for this moment, not knowing it would come, but trusting that when it did, I would be ready. And I accepted that whatever happened would be what needed to happen. That evening, as news of the trial spread across the galaxy, Earth received its first requests for diplomatic missions from over 200 alien civilizations. Universities wanted to establish exchange programs. Military academies sought training partnerships. Spiritual seekers from a dozen species requested permission to study at Shaolin temples. Master Li Wei returned to his simple quarters aboard the station, where he resumed his meditation practice. The sounds of celebration and political maneuvering in the corridors outside seemed very distant as he focused on his breathing and the gentle circulation of qi through his body. He thought of his teachers, living and dead, who had preserved these ancient arts through centuries of change and challenge. They had always known that wisdom transcends the boundaries of worlds and species. Today, the universe had learned that truth. In the vast arena where he had faced 3 deadly opponents, cleaning crews worked to repair the damage from dimensional rifts and sonic attacks. They found, carved into the reinforced plating by some unknown force, a series of symbols in ancient Chinese characters. When translated, they read, "In yielding, one conquers. In emptiness, one finds fullness. In peace, one discovers the heart of all strength." The galaxy would spend centuries learning to understand these words. But for now, humanity had taken its first step toward becoming not just members of the galactic community, but teachers for an entire universe ready to discover new ways of being strong. The stars shone down on the Combat Council station, and in their light, the future looked very different than anyone had imagined just a few days before. The age of humanity among the stars had begun not with conquest or technology, but with the quiet wisdom of an elderly monk who understood that true power comes from harmony rather than force. And across the galaxy, in dojos and training centers on 1,000 worlds, beings of every imaginable form began to ask the same question. What is this thing the humans call qi? And how can we learn to feel it ourselves? The answer, as Master Li Wei could have told them, was always closer than they thought.